is up, everybody? Welcome back to D9 Sports Talk, and today we are going to go over the wide receivers of the Green Bay Packers. Why? Because like I said last week, I should say last week, but the other day, if you can figure out which one of these receivers is going to get all the targets from Aaron Rodgers, you're going to be set up so great for success because of the rounds that you're more than likely getting them. So let's dive on in, okay? We have Allen Lazzard versus Sammy Watkins versus the rookie Christian Watson. And currently, that's how they are ranked on the wide receiver depth chart for the Green Bay Packers. So let's kind of dive on in that order on kind of my thought process, their ADP currently, and what we're thinking about them. Okay? First up, Allen Lazzard. So this is just kind of Allen Lazzard over, the past regular season and then his 4 years at Green Bay. Nothing too spectacular. I mean, he's always been the wide receiver 3 on the depth chart since he's been there. So there's not really, great numbers. But the one thing that Allen Lazzard has is that the experience of the offense, knowing the offense, having that repetition with Aaron Rodgers, which is going to be huge for him going throughout the season. So let's just jump on over. If you want to pause, dive into these numbers a little more, you can. But this shows Allen Lazzard last season. 60 targets, 40 receptions, 513 yards, average of 12.8 yards per reception, 8 touchdowns, 3 carries, 32 yards. Those don't really matter, but look at the touchdowns. 0 touchdowns. And for 142.5 fantasy points in a full PPR league. And then looking at his projections, 80 targets, 53 receptions, 674 yards with the same average and 6 touchdowns. Okay, so not really too much more of an improvement when we're looking at Allen Lazzard as far as there being a massive gap in this hole. Is that something we 100% agree upon? I'm not saying that by any means. Like I said, I think I'll go over predictions at the end of the video, but as of right now, I just don't really see how Allen Lazzard can kind of sustain being that number 1 wide receiver in that group. He's always been the wide receiver 3. He's never really had a big breakout game. Currently, he is the wide receiver 44 on Underdog with a current ADP of 91.1 and a projected ADP of 94. Like I said, his pros is he has 4 seasons with Aaron Rodgers. So that ADP to projection shows us that they're pretty sure this is where Allen Lazzard is going to be going. If you're somebody who is kind of high on Allen Lazzard, might be a good pickup for you because he's, like I said, he's had the most reps in this offense. There's a good chance he could be the wide receiver 1 throughout the season, but it's not necessarily my thought process on Allen Lazzard. So, moving forward, let's go to Sammy Watkins. This is going to be the veteran of the group. As you can see, Sammy Watkins started off in his rookie campaign pretty dang solid, in his sophomore campaign pretty solid. He started his career off pretty solid. Then he got injured because Rex Ryan just like, hey, we're just going to we're going to make you keep playing. And that kind of set him back. And then he gets traded to the Rams and then traded to Kansas City and then traded to Baltimore and just never really was what we thought he was going to be, being that 4th round pick back in 2014. Looking at his targets last year in an offense where, again, they didn't have too many weapons over there in Baltimore. I mean, they were down to their, 4th string running back, essentially. And they had Rashard Bateman as a rookie, and they had Hollywood Brown. other than that, I mean, that you would think that Sammy Watkins would have easily been the wide receiver 2 in that situation. I know he started the year off kind of strong, but he just wasn't able to keep that up throughout the full season. So looking at his numbers last year, you're seeing targets of 49, 27 receptions, 394 yards, 14.6 yards on average, only 1 touchdown for only 70.4 fantasy points. And then his projections this season, which I do think are going to be a little bit low, but we see 51 targets, 32 receptions, 420 yards with an average of 13 yards a catch and 3 touchdowns, right around 93 fantasy points. Like I said, I think that's going to be a little low. Not saying that I believe Sammy Watkins is going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. I just think that they are going to use Sammy Watkins as that deep threat. He's still a very explosive receiver. He can still get downfield and get past defenders. So I feel like, yeah, his targets and stuff might not be as much, but I do think that his yards are going to be a little bit more, probably a couple more touchdowns, just going to be, huge play touchdowns that are kind of going to keep him in there for your fantasy points. If you kind of need somebody to throw in there, kind of a boom or bust player is going to be more where I see Sammy Watkins being. He's currently wide receiver 75 with his ADP of being 186.6, but he's projected to go 69.9. So what that is telling us is that they believe that Sammy Watkins is going to be better than what he currently is, or what they're currently thinking. They're thinking by the time draft season comes along, that instead of Sammy Watkins being somebody you can pick up in free agency, he's going to be getting drafted around that 7th round, which I don't think is a terrible spot if you're picking up Sammy Watkins, which, like I said, he could very well be the number 1 option of this offense. And moving on to the rookie, Christian Watson. Christian Watson, coming out of North Dakota State, kind of was late to the draft. I shouldn't say late, but he opted out, and then he had spring ball, so then he couldn't come over during his junior year, so he kind of had to play his senior year. So he is 23, so he's a little bit older for a rookie, but he is 6'4" and 208 pounds is what he weighed in at the combine. I mean, that's a big target. And if you're trying to replace those targets that Devontae Adams had, you're going to need a big target like that. They are currently projecting him around 85 targets, 53 receptions, because he's had a drop issue, which I don't really think was too much of an issue. I think that was more Christian Watson trying to make big plays before the play was even made, if that makes sense to you. I think it was him trying to cut up field before he completely looked the ball in, and not really giving himself time to look the ball in and then turning up field, which is something that's going to change with Aaron Rodgers being his quarterback. Rodgers will not put up with that kind of, that thought process, I should say. Then he they're projecting averaging him 13.4 yards, 6 receptions, and I missed 709 total yards with a total of 163 fantasy points, which is right around where they're having Alan Lazzard. And then currently he's the wide receiver 53 coming off the board, so between Sammy Watkins and Alan Lazzard, which as of right now, if the draft was today and we, not knowing anything else, I would agree with that. His current ADP is 112.7, but his projected APD is 56.5, which means that they are projecting by the time season rolls around, Christian Watson is going to be the best receiver on this team. And I honestly think I might agree with that. Let's move on over to my projections. We'll kind of go through a whole rundown and explain a couple things. So, my prediction, Alan Lazzard. I think he's going to be that consistent guy, a little bit of a boomer bust player. I think there's going to be games where Rodgers will target him heavy, and he might see around 10 targets a game, but then there's going to be those other games where he only might see the 1, 2, 3 targets with maybe 1 or 2 catches. But for the most part, I think he's going to be kind of that steady wide receiver too. Sammy Watkins. I think he's going to come out and be very explosive at the beginning of the season. And then whether it's an injury or Christian Watson finally, getting his NFL sea legs under him, if you will, is going to take over and just end up being that wide receiver 1 in my mind. And I don't genuinely like to draft rookies, but in this situation it makes sense. I think Christian Watson's going to have a slow start. I think he is going to probably, like I was saying in my previous video, kind of like Jamar Chase, might take 5 games for him to, get used to the speed, get used to the route tree, and just get used to, the caliber of defenses he's going to have to be playing. Especially, you got to think, he came from a small school in college. It's not like he played in the Big Ten, or any of the big divisions in college. He came from a small college school. So that transition is going to be even a lot harder for him. During preseason, we'll definitely be able to see how he's adapting way better. But just like Jamar Chase last season, he didn't have a good preseason at all. He dropped a lot of his balls. I think it's going to be something very similar to Christian Watson, where he might just drop a couple, but then you start putting him in those games, and Rodgers starts showing him that trust. They start giving him some design plays in the red zones. Like I said, he's a big body in the red zone, just like Davante Adams was. I think him and Rodgers are going to end up having the best connection. Because also you have to remember, Rodgers is going to be there for another 3 years at least, per his contract. Yeah, obviously things can happen, but per his contract, he's there for another 3 years at least. So that's 3 years where they're probably going to have to get along. I mean, they went and got him in the second round. They're not going to just move off him. They're not just like, oh, well, he's a bust. We got to go somewhere else. They see value in him for good reasons. I mean, he's a fast kid. I think he runs like a 4.46. He had like a 31-inch vertical in the combine. He's a fast kid. He's a big body. I don't want to say Randy Moss-esque, but he's going to have that speed where he's just blowing by defenders. But then he's also going to have the capability of just rising above everybody else and getting the ball. So I think by the time it all comes, is said and done, I would take Christian Watson 1, probably Allen Lazzard 2, and Sammy Watkins 3, unless I'm kind of just needing that boom or bust play, which I think Sammy Watkins' ceiling can be a lot higher on a per game basis compared to Allen Lazzard. But Christian Watson, definitely going to be my number 1 pick for the Green Bay Packers as far as their wide receiving room goes, especially since it's such a big void to fill. I think they're going to be spreading the ball out pretty evenly, but even with that 6th round pick, if I'm getting a target that I believe is going to be getting a lot of receptions, going to be getting, a big, decent workload from an offensive standpoint, a decent amount of red zone targets. I'm not talking about, like, we all know, Green Bay Packers, if they're on the 5-yard line, they want to run a little out route to Aaron Jones, and if they're within the 3-yard line, they're probably just going to feed the ball to A.J. Dillon up the middle. But from about that 5 to 20-yard line range, I really think that's where we're going to see Christian Watson come alive. So that's all I have for you this week. If you disagree, leave a comment, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Again, we're going to be posting 3 videos a week. I am here to help you guys dominate your fantasy leagues. So keep coming back. Don't forget to mark the bell so that you can get notifications every time I drop a video. Peace.